From time immemorial, there has been an island called Barra, far off the western coast of Scotland, in the long string of beads ringed by the sea, the islands of the Outer Hebrides. People have lived here for countless ages. In recorded history, the first to settle here were Celtic seafarers from Ireland, who came before the time of Christianity and, with the later Vikings, produced a beautiful musical people whose native tongue is Gaelic, and who tell and retell in story and song the timeless legends of Barra, Barra, jewel of the ocean.
De grote hoeken oortwijn, ga je maar, schimmer ver aan de nacht, ringt de nacht erin, kovers muren gaat draai, nooit halan is tien haris. Hoor me uina tomojet, wat de gorang nieuw tachtje. Dooroi maar naar rood, is gachtoi wat lachmoor. Sminach hier glad stor, na fijn kort als lekkerste. Waar me goed tromor, snachel to je
Life here has always revolved around the sea, the tides and the weather. Situated in a little inlet on the southern end of the island, the wee village of Castle Bay is a place of small shops and narrow streets. From Ben Hevel, the Virgin Mary looks down over the harbour, where in a little island in the centre sits Kismo Castle, hereditary stronghold of the Clan MacNeil. On July the 29th, 1987, as the ferry pulled into the bay, the pier was alive with people waiting to welcome over 200 members of the Clan MacNeil Association, who had travelled from all parts of the world in an historic return to Barra. For many, it was a trip of a lifetime.
Well, the clan gathering is a kind of a spectacular, one might say. I mean, what matters about the clan is not the gathering itself. The clan simply means family. And it's like family reunions, which are not what the family is all about, but their way of focusing on what the family is all about. And the clan gathering is like that. And for people to come back and see where they came from physically, and to see their relatives, and even to see that a lot of their relatives 8, 9 generations away still look like them to some extent. I mean, my wife insists she can spot a MacNeil a mile away.
The symbol of the island of Barra is Kismo Castle, which sits on a small island in the middle of Castle Bay. Kismo is the ancient stronghold of the Clan MacNeil, seafaring pirates for 700 years. For 200 years the castle was abandoned and in ruins, and was restored in 1970 by Robert Lister MacNeil, the 45th chief and father of the present chief.
The history of the castle is a rather complex question, partly because it wasn't, in any event, it was not built all at one time. And it depends upon who you believe. Our family tradition is that it was built started in 1030, in which case it was still Norse territory, so the Neils must have married some Norse if they were here at the time, which we claim we were. It was built in pieces, probably a curtain wall around the island first, and then the big tower was built next. The inner buildings were built later. There are stories about the inner buildings which suggest a fairly early construction of them. For example, the window in the Great Hall which was 8 feet high and 3 feet wide, which was massive at the time. The castle was certainly here for several hundred years before it was abandoned. It was abandoned about 1750, and then it was burned out in 1790s. In the mid-1800s, when the fishing industry was going here in a big way, the salt boats came out from Glasgow and they started quarrying the castle to take it back for ballast. They took all the lintels, the long stones over doors and windows, and then they started in on the main part of the castle, and they had taken quite a bit of it away. By this time the MacNeils had lost Barra. My father started restoration work on it before the war, a little bit, mainly preservation work. And then after the war in the 1950s, he started at about age 65, he started the main restoration. And it was virtually completely restored by his death in 1970.
Opening ceremonies for the clan gathering were held in Kismo Castle. Small boats ferried the 200 visitors from the pier to the island. A reception was held inside the Great Hall, where the chief and his family officially welcomed the visitors from all parts of the world.
I, Ian Roderick MacNeil of Barra, Chief of the Clan MacNeil, hereby announce the opening of the second decennial worldwide gathering of the Clan MacNeil. The clan has risen not to do battle, but to bind the ties of kinship. There was another gathering of MacNeils, 150 of them came here, and the ceremony was carried out, and the trumpet was blown from the tower, and I think I may be indebted to Father Callum for this story. It seems that there was a tourist who was being rowed past the castle about the time this happened, and the tourist said, "What's that?" And Barra people, you know, are professionals at never being nonplussed by anything. And the Barra, perfectly straight-faced, said, "Well, he says that's the chief's trumpeter." And the tourist took that in and said, "How often does that happen?" "Well, the last time was about 400 years ago."
Opening ceremonies included the unveiling of a plaque in the chapel to the memory of Henry Slack MacNeil, a clans member who assisted in the renovation of the castle tower. History was reenacted when the chief's son climbed to the battlements and after a mighty blast on the silver trumpet exclaimed to the world, "Hear, O ye people, and listen all ye nations, the great MacNeil of Barra, having finished his meal, the princes of the world may now dine." The visit to the castle was to prove the high point for many clan members.
Oh, I thought it was wonderful, and I loved seeing the chief. He looked so pretty and nice. I enjoyed it very much.
Oh, I think it's great. I really enjoy myself a lot. I'm really happy I was able to come here. I'm just still learning everything about where I'm from and everything, but it's really interesting. I'm enjoying it.
It's so nice to be MacNeils. Yes.
Oh, I think it's the most wonderful feeling I've had in many years to come back where my people came. It's so exciting. And it just gives you an awesome feeling, a real reverent feeling to know that this is where we started. It's been great. I can't wait to go back to North Carolina and tell my family.
Well, we're over here as part of a group of 200 Americans, and some from France, New Zealand, Canada, and Nova Scotia, attending a gathering called by the chief of our clan, Ian Roderick MacNeil. This is the occasion of 50 years after the land surrounding Kismo Castle was reacquired by the chief, after it had been out of the clan's power for 99 years.
Well, Dr. Herb, of course, had written a Barra guidebook many years ago, and he sent me a copy of it to review, and in reading it, of course, I was trying to live the trip through the book. And one of the first places that Herb really pointed out in that early guide was St. Columba's Well. Now, I think this speaks well of the people and their thoughts as they name the important places, and this certainly is one of the very important places on the island.
Throughout the history of Barra, its people have gone out to sea, many never to return. Praise for the beauties of Barra and a longing for the island are expressed in many Gaelic songs. The song, Barra, this little island in the ocean, describes how the young people who leave the island will never forget the language and the music. Life, though, has always been very hard on Barra, today as ever in the past. Historically, the economy was based on fishing. Morag Macaulay, who lives in a cottage overlooking Castle Bay, is respected as a source of information about the island's history.
Barra was the most famous of the islands for fishing. It's a pity I haven't the book that you could see all the. At one time you could walk from Battersea to the pier on fishing boats, sailing boats at that. It was famous, Barra was famous for fishing.
Small crofts, farmed under the tenancy of the clan chief, many now in ruins, dot the island, where crofting is still practiced today. Sheep were raised then as now for their meat and their precious wool. Meal was ground every day with millstones or querns, and fish oil was burned for light.
My father brought them over from Banquet. I didn't bring them anyway, too heavy. He brought them over, yes. And this square thing here, you see the mark at the side there, that was moulds for making the crushkin. That was the light they had.
Peat was burned for heat in the long winter months, and is still being cut out of the earth today.
And the instrument you're using?
It's a trishkit. A trishkit.
Trishkit.
Trishkit. A trishkit. It cuts, you know, and it cuts it that way and this way.
Yes.
Crofting was the subject of a public meeting organised by the Clan MacNeil Association. It was well attended by both islanders and visitors. Other activities involved the children of the island as well as the visiting MacNeils. One of the first was a foot race held in Castle Bay. On Friday evening, the island children put on a play at Castle Bay School which traced the history of the MacNeils of Barra. The play was performed in Gaelic and a synopsis was read for the English-speaking members of the audience. The 17th century MacNeils are preparing for a banquet in Kismo Castle to celebrate their victory over the MacDonalds of Uist. The MacNeils have always had a reputation of being a proud and mighty clan, excellent and daring seafarers. Interwoven with their religion was a love of music, song and dance, which they believed were God-given gifts to be used and shared with others. During the chieftainship of Roderick the Turbulent, it was foretold that there would come a time when Kismo Castle would be abandoned and the people of Barra would face hard times. By the end of the 18th century, this had come to pass. The legend of Kismo Castle and the power of MacNeil was only remembered in song and story. When Roderick Lister MacNeil, the 45th chief, arrived on the island, people were not overjoyed or impressed. But in the years to follow, they did give credit to the man for rebuilding the castle and regaining part of the island. In 1987, every island child is aware and interested in the history of the MacNeils, and the arrival of 200 other MacNeils from afar truly adds another colourful chapter to our island history.
Now let's go to our castle.
Robert Lister is a man who, practically from birth, lived for Barra. Born in Marshall, Michigan, December 10th, 1889, as a lad, he knew he was going to be chief because his father had inherited the chiefship.
Well, I think the origin of that passion came from his mother, who was a very romantic and strong-willed woman, and she filled his head with the chiefship and the romance of the MacNeils and so on from the time he was a little boy, and became his lifelong ambition to get the island back, get the castle back, and restore the castle. When he was about quite young, 10 or 11, I think, he built his own Kismo Castle in the backyard. It was 2 stories, and he had electricity to it and everything. He must have been quite inventive when he was a little boy. And that was his first Kismo Castle.
And in later years, at the age of 20, in the year 1909, he came over with his mother and visited the ruins. They didn't belong to him, nor to his family at that time. He then recaptured the castle in 1937, and before he died in 1970, he was able to repair the walls, which had been 40% removed, repair the tremendous crack in the great tower, repair the great hall. But someone came to him during the restoration period with a little goblet and said, "I found this in the rubbish years ago, and now that you've come back to Barra, I want you to have it." This vase was given to the chief, and the chief liked it so well, and of course it was a beautiful relic, so he had a dozen of them made. And it's meaningful to me because when I retired, Royce, the chief, gave me one of them.
Any story of Barra could not be complete without music and dance. A ceilidh was held in the school auditorium for both visitors and islanders to express their love for the island and for Highland and Hebridean music and dancing.
I said, gentle sir, I can never forget you, for surely so far on the road to Dundee.
An excerpt from author Compton Mackenzie's Whiskey Galore, which features Barra and its famous caves, was recited for the audience.
And then the smell of nectar came on the wild wind's breath. I smell it, screamed old Hector. It's whiskey sure as death. He cried out, Casti, Casti, hang down my oilskin coat. No more shall I be thirsty. Salvation is in that boat.
This is a dance I composed myself, and it's called Kismo Castle. The trumpet. And they used to say, "Hear all ye people, listen all ye nations. The great MacNeil of Barra having finished his meal, the princes of the earth may dine now."
Well received was the performance of Christy Saunders of Newark, New Jersey, the official harpist of the Clan MacNeil Association of America. Besides Kismo Castle, there are many other ancient and historical sites around Barra, including Neolithic standing stones and rock cairns that are thousands of years old. The island is rich with history, like all the Hebrides.
St. Barra is the saint after which the island is called, which is quite obvious, except that his name was really Finbar. We're not awfully certain about when he came to Barra, but there is down at the north end of the island a place called Kilbar. Now, Kil is the Gaelic name for church, and there is a sort of 10th century settlement there. It became ruinous after some time, but in recent years one of the priests who worked in Barra, MacNeil, re-roofed one of the old churches, and inside that old church there are some of the gravestones with runic designs, very precious ones, which came from Iona and were used by the MacNeil clan to cover their own graves. St. Columba has some part of practically each island on the whole of the west of Scotland dedicated to him. And to keep that memory alive, we each year meet together near the well of St. Columba. In recent years someone put down stones in the shape of a rosary, and we say the rosary there and sing our Gaelic hymns, particularly the hymn St. Columba, and pray for his protection.
One of the favorite stories that I think especially of when I'm here at this spot is that one of the chiefs had a wife that he wasn't particularly fond of, and the story goes that he built this little castle for her, and the windows are quite small so she couldn't escape, and he kept her locked up here while he could move about the Hebrides and other places as he so desired.
Yeah, the windows, I think the largest window is 4 inches high, so it wasn't made for a place of great enjoyment.
When a small island has been inhabited for thousands of years, many romantic stories grow up around it. At the time that the Vikings were still in Barra, there lived a chief of the MacNeils who found favour in a brown-haired lass. No, this MacNeil already had a wife and family in Kismo Castle, so that when a brown-haired lass became with child, MacNeil was not pleased. He built a wee castle for her in a little island in the loch that sits in the middle of the dark glen. It could only be reached by a series of stepping stones. In this wee castle a son was born and grew up without knowing his father. he was called MacNeil, or Son of Doubt. When the boy came of age, he went to confront MacNeil, who would neither confirm nor deny the claim, but sent the boy off on a task. He must cut out the tongues of 3 Vikings and bring them back to the castle. With the aid of a wise old cobbler, the boy succeeded, and MacNeil rewarded him with land on the island of Skye. If you look carefully from the dark glen, you can just see the island of Skye in the distance, and that is why they say there are MacNeils on Skye. There are many other stories told about the MacNeils of Barra.
Well, you're on the island of Barra, on the west side with the Atlantic just a few hundred yards off here, standing next to the judgment seat. The story we get from only one source, from Archie MacDonald, given us in 1974, was that this was the seat used by one of the former chiefs, would sit on this seat and would hold court, judge on the penalties to be inflicted on any criminals. And those found guilty of a major crime would be tossed off the cliff yonder into an abyss about 35 feet deep. Archie, I think, took a position like this and sat here and put his hands here as if these were arms to a chair. And he then would feel pretty much like a chief.
The age-old struggle between good and evil is represented by a spot on the north end of the island on the way up Ben Ereval. There, the giant hanging stone perches precariously, seemingly about to tumble down at any moment. It is said that an old witch is pushing the rock on one side, while an angel down below holds it in place with spiritual force.
Well, most of the clan's people at that time did roam about a lot. That was one way of acquiring wealth. They could go from different islands and pirate and steal sheep, tombstones. The story goes on one trip they could find no cattle or anything of wealth, so they just stole some tombstones to bring back to show their power and how adventurous they were. And that was just really a way of life at that time.
The MacNeil clan crest reflects the history of the clan.
The first one, the first quarter, is the Lion of Scotland, and that shows which is really, of course, Irish originally, because Scotia was Scotia Major was Ireland and Scotia Minor was Scotland, and that shows the family's claimed descent from the old Dalriadic Scots who settled in Argyll area in 600-700s, I guess it was. The second quarter is the rock, the castle, and it represents the castle itself and its importance in the clan's history. The third quarter is the Black Galley, and that is the galley of the Lords of the Isles, and which are descent and connection with the Lords of the Isles. The fourth quarter is an interesting one. It's a red hand and 9 fetterlocks. The red hand is to Irish mythology. Both of those show our descent from the Neils of Ireland. And the red hand is the red hand of Ulster. And the story is that when the Celts first came to Ireland, it was agreed that whoever first put his right hand on the shore of Ireland would be High King. And the Neil chief of the day saw that he wasn't going to quite make it, and so he cut off his hand and threw it on the shore, so his hand was first and he became High King. The 9 fetterlocks are of Neil of the 9 hostages, who we count as our first chief, and our descent is from him. And he is the chief, or the Irish king, who captured St. Patrick, and a number of other hostages, and those fetterlocks reflect and took St. Patrick to Ireland and thereby introduced, in the long run, Christianity into Ireland.
One of the stories that I like about the castle is where the MacNeil was about to run out of food. The Vikings had nearly done them in, so to speak, and the chief had gone through all of the cattle that he had brought into Kismo Castle. So he decided that what he would do is kill his dogs and pour the fresh blood on some of the old cowhides and hang them up over the wall so that the Vikings could witness that fresh cowhide, thinking that they had fresh meat. So as the story goes, the Vikings saw the fresh hides with the blood dripping from them and decided, well, there's no use, the MacNeils have done us in again, so they sailed back to whence they came.
Well, the motto is Vincere Vel More, if you insist on the Latin, or Bui no Ba, if you insist on the Gaelic, as I do. And it means victory or death. And that's the chief's motto.
In addition to the shops in Castle Bay, island businesses include the fish processing plant, which gives work to many residents. The island is also the site of one of the 3 Decca navigation towers in the world, which provide a navigational reference for ships. The craft shop serves as an outlet for hand-knitted items and other goods, and is a popular stop for visitors.
The sweaters are knitted by local ladies, and I get hand-knitted socks, and the paintings and pebble-work are my own, and the rest brought in from all over Scotland.
Just north of Castle Bay, the Hebridean Perfume Factory is another island business and a popular stop for tourists.
Clan MacNeil, which you are very seen. Now this was composed in 1981 for the Clan MacNeil Association of America. And we based this on a number note with lilac top notes.
Whether they arrive by sea or by air, visitors to the island want to visit the airport to see the plane land on Barra's famous Cockleshell Beach. Inside the airport terminal are the lovely shell murals by Barra artist Margaret Somerville, who is also of Clan MacNeil descent, and whose works are found throughout the island.
My father tiled the bathroom, and the tiles went slightly squint. And my mother said, for goodness sake, do something to take the eyes off those tiles. What about sticking a shell or 2 up? So I did a fish. That's how it started. But the one in the airport, well, I mean, the wall was so vast, I thought, well, I'll try a different background and just use the paint.
Working with the islanders, the Clan MacNeil Association organised a series of children's games on Saturday morning.
Ready, set, go!
Are you filming?
A sailboat race in Castle Bay for islanders and visitors took place that afternoon. Saturday evening, the Clan MacNeil Association held their awards banquet, with presentations and awards given out to those who have contributed to the society over the years. Highlight of the banquet was the keynote speech given by James Adam of Edinburgh, journalist, author and supporter of Scottish clan gatherings throughout the world.
Somewhere deep down, the overseas Scottish community will latch onto the Scottish part of their heritage, even if that's only at one grandmother or a great-grandfather. For some reason, they're prepared to search for that part of their heritage and cling on to it and pursue it. And the only justification I can find for that, nothing to do with the dressing up or whatever. I think it arises out of the fact that deep down they recognize that throughout history, the Scot has stood for a set of values. A number of values in which they are prepared to stand and be counted. And one of these in particular is the historical insistence on the importance of freedom.
Well, I think it's very important that people are aware of their own identity, and you can't really be aware of your identity unless you are aware of your roots. And we live in a particularly delicate part of the world where we have our own culture and language, which is under constant onslaught from English. People themselves are becoming more and more aware that they have something really useful and precious in their own heritage and in their own language. And one of the cheering things about this visit is that one finds people, even in America, having a great interest in the language and learning it and singing it.
Sunday morning, visiting MacNeil's joined islanders in worship at either the Star of the Sea Catholic Church or the Church of Scotland. Rainy weather caused Sunday afternoon's picnic to be held inside instead of on Highland Beach.
We're inside the community school because we have been driven inside by some Barra weather, which is rain. Up until today, we have had beautiful weather, but our beach picnic had to be brought indoors, and so we are in the Barra Community School having an indoor picnic, which will really probably turn into a ceilidh.
We're together because at the reception in Kismo Castle, standing there among all those people we didn't know, my sister said,
"My God, there's our cousin me." And this lady here, who comes all the way from Ohio, is the absolute double of our own cousin who lives in Scotland. And so of course we're homed in on her, and from then on it's been friends all the way, hasn't it? She's Joan MacNeil, and I'm Joan MacNeil.
And I'm Margaret MacNeil.
Edinburgh, Perth, and Ohio.
I didn't know a thing about it, and he sent it to me, and then from then on I got the gallery every month. And I said to my husband, "Let's go." We thought about it, and then we said, "Oh, well, never mind." But then at the last minute we decided to come, just to see how many MacNeils I could meet that I hadn't ever seen before.
Well, I've been a member of the clan since the 1950s, and we have regular meetings, and I heard about this gathering 2 years ago, so I said, right, I've never been to Barra before, this is my chance.
And this is my sister, you see, so she said there's a Clan MacNeil gathering, a chance to go to Barra at last, so we got in the act, and wouldn't have missed it for the world. It's been great.
The Clan MacNeil Association keeps us all together. We are scattered all over the United States. We have opportunities some of us, to meet at the Highland Games, but we are also kept together by our newsletter, The Galley, and it gives us a feeling of clansmanship to all be together and know that we have a common heritage. I may say that my own background is German, but I married a Scot. And the chief of the clan said, "Ethel, when you marry a Scot, you're part of the clan." And so I am an adopted Scot and have been a very busy one and a very dedicated one.
My grandmother came over from Rutherglen when she was 12 years old. And I spent many of my summers with her in Pittsburgh. And she was very proud of her Scottish heritage. And I started wearing kilted skirts when I was about 18 months old. And being the first Gilliland girl in 9 generations, I received the pin from the family, which I wear very proudly today. I'm very happy to have it. I've always been very interested in my Scottish heritage, and I hope that our children will carry it on.
I have sitting here with me my daughter Anne,
Matthews from Ithaca, New York, and my daughter Kathy Matthews Ezra from Udim, Israel.
Great time.
Yeah, we
Wonderful
enjoyed
weather.
it.
It's been beautiful. Really had a wonderful time.
Well, I'm from the O'Neills, which are the ancestors of the MacNeils, as you know. And I've learned I had to cross a lot of water to get here.
I organized this because the chief called a gathering for this period in 1987, and he left it up to the various clan associations to make up events that we thought would be most useful to the clan in understanding their heritage on Barra. And this is why we have had Kayleys in the evening, which is our own entertainment, and we have had picnics, and we're going to have a small harp or clarsach concert this afternoon. And these are all things that have been very meaningful to the people as being part of their heritage from this island.
During the picnic, there was a demonstration on the proper way to wrap the filimore, or belted plaid, the forerunner to the modern kilt. The clarsach is a very ancient instrument. Traditionally played in Scotland centuries ago, the music of the harp was once nearly a lost art. The Clan MacNeil Association is helping revive this tradition on Barra.
Well, I'll introduce you to them first of all. This is Mary MacLeod, Michelle MacLeod, Elisich MacLeod, Janet Zerfus, Marion MacNeil, Flora MacLeod, Faye MacLeod, and Teresa MacLeod.
Transplanted, very appropriately by Dr. Herbert P. MacNeil, really. Yes, I mean it's... Oh, I don't think there's any record of when instruments were used here, really. It goes way, way back, though. So the group that I've got now, these 9 children, I take them every week. And Dr. Herbert P. and Ethel keep in touch. I mean, they've always been involved with it. And when they came a year ago, they came to our practice and they said, right, please will you put on a concert for the clan gathering? And that's how that came about.
When I go to Grandfather Mountain and go around the clan tents, all tents labelled, named, and everyone at these individual tents wearing the same tartan, so you're aware of who they are, and you see them grouped together. And on my first visit to Grandfather Mountain, I was impressed by one fact. As I was going from clan tent to clan tent, I was seeing a group face. I was seeing a MacNeil face, I was seeing a MacDonald face, a Campbell face, a Fraser face, And although they all had a general Scottishness, the genetic inheritance was still there, and there was still a general MacNeil face, general MacNeil character, and so on through the clans.
And all I can say is the spirit of Barra, which I know about. And that spirit is a spirit of great hope, of contentment, and an hospitable and tolerant attitude to life.
It's putting up with adversity and conquering it, accepting grave discomfort and difficulties, and being guided by the expression famous in Roman times and adopted by our clan of conquer or die. In Gaelic, vui na bos, and in Latin, Victor vel mori, all of which are reproduced in our crest badges.
Well, the work on the castle I think, has had a very beneficial effect on the island. I think the castle, has always been a symbol.
The old boy Robert Liston MacNeil, who rebuilt that castle there was this man pursuing an objective, a lifetime's objective, and he took a 200-year-old ruin, and 200 years almost to the year, he and his wife were able to go into the Dormer house and take up residence during the summer.
One often questions, why do 200 people of Scottish ancestry in America, why do they want to come over to Scotland? It's because they feel a close tie to the place of their ancestors, and because they wish to remember the traditions, pass them on to their children, so that others may appreciate the associated virtues.
You can't be a real anything unless you're aware of your roots, and you can't be fully aware of your roots unless you're aware of the language. And yes, learn the language and enjoy the beautiful culture that is attached to it.
60 years ago, a famous poet and songster from the island of Uist wrote the song Gruachach Och an Ulchvain, or Fair Maid of Barra, for Morag Macaulay. As she sings it now, you can hear the poet's description of her beauty, which is the timeless beauty of Barra.
Gruachach Och an Ulchvain, she partach movilen, har jag gather har chai, cert skari mir chile, shimmer chase ruchur mi oi, anskachtu jaskine, onachen de kjolun, smibig zondag katheder.
Though the ferry took the Clan MacNeil visitors away from Barra towards their own homelands, for many of them the return to Barra had just begun.
Well, as an exiled Scot who immigrated to the States 20 years ago, I just thought, well, I better see a little bit of homeland before I, shall I say, kick the bucket. And I enjoyed it.
And to go home and realise that we are a big family, and it's certainly a very big family, and a very big family to be proud of, because I've always been told a MacNeil should always be very, very proud.
Well, it's been great 5 days, wonderful. 10 years, a long time.
Yes, it was a wonderful time. It is my second visit. The island has a sort of simple and yet mystical quality, I think, and a pull on our blood some way that brings us back to Barra.
Partial funding for this production was provided by Highland Express, the Scottish flag carrier.